So Thomas Paine writes what becomes the most critical pamphlet of that 1776 year. And he writes it in January. He's one of the people who's sort of saying, like, forget about, I mean, there are people in the second kind of Congress saying, are the peaceful accords, and essentially he has a number of arguments of common sense. But his first is, what are you crazy to think about? Blood has been shed. We are at war. Let's just forget about leading any kind of peaceful solution. The more important thing he says, the British liberty, I believe, has always been a shame. Fundamentally, what you have to understand, he says, is there's no distinction between any kind of monarchy. You say the French have an absolutist monarchy and that Britain has a limited constitutional monarchy. Well, that's bogus. We've now seen that monarchy is always going to seek to be absolute. No matter what you call monarchy, will eventually end with the coercive acts. The only way that we can preserve liberty, he says, is by realizing that monarchy itself is an institution anathema to, opposed to, fundamentally a threat to the idea of liberty. And so his pamphlet is calling for not just simply independence from Britain, but independence from things British, independence from the structures of British government, and a call for a government without any kind of hereditary rule at all, without kings, without a House of Lords, what we would call a republic, a government entirely elected. Now, this pamphlet sells, we've downgraded the number a little bit in scholarship, but still probably sold about 60,000 copies at a time when other best-selling pamphlets would maybe sell 4,000 or 5,000. It's almost certainly the case that every single person either read or had read to them common sense. But something a lot of people don't know is that, remember Thomas Hutchinson, that governor of Massachusetts, who's determined to enforce the coercive acts? His people had come over in the 1630s. If you've heard of Anne Hutchinson, of the famous conflict, that's his ancestor. Thomas Paine left England in 1773 and came to Columbia. He'd been there for 2 years. So in many ways, it's not about longevity in colonial America. It's about where you stand in these big, grand constitutional questions. And what Paine and other people like him are saying is that in the end, if you care for what you used to think of as British liberty, you have to realize not only that Britain is the biggest threat to it, but the very structure of hereditary governance, particularly the form of monarchy, are threats to liberty. And that if we are going to preserve liberty, we can't, in fact, recreate in independent colonial America any of those structures. And we are going to need to figure out a way to have an organized and coherent republic in order to preserve liberty. Now, that's another whole hour conversation in the time flow, because republics are seen as the most unstable and the craziest and the most unlikely of experiments that never work and always collapse into chaos and anarchy. So they have typical choices here. Everything they've known before isn't working. Now, if the only possibility going forward is something that never has worked before, how are they going to make it work? Paine has ideas, other people have ideas, and we're still trying to figure it out.